everybody. I'd like to bring this to order. Lee County Planning Commission. First start off with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now a moment of silence. Thank you all very much. Okay, we have a short agenda tonight. Does anybody have any changes they want to recommend or? Okay, Mr. Weekly made the motion, and Jared, sorry Jared, terrible. Seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. All of you should have the revised ordinance back from solar facilities that came back from Berkeley Group. You all should have been able to read most of it or all of it, and I'd like to know what you like to go around if there's any questions or comments that you have on that. And we can start. Who wants to start? All right. Well, Donnie, you have anything?
I found one mistake.
Okay.
I caught Tracy in it. I was on 125.78. Number 7. Last year.
What is it?
What's the solar facility does not receive a fuel commitment within 1824 months. That's just, I don't put type of thing, whatever. What's it mean, 1824?
Oh, I
Oh, you
see.
should
Yeah,
be
it's written out as
18.
18.
Yeah,
It should be
18.
written out as 24. Okay.
So it's gonna be 18 or 24?
24.
24.
24.
I think they meant it was between 18 and 24.
Oh. Well, we don't have a minimum on it, but it would give you up to 24 months.
Shouldn't it also include no renewal after that, that you could come back again?
Why would,
Well, it says here that.
wouldn't that be up to the supervisors to determine that?
That final draft.
Final draft.
It should be terminated.
Oh, okay, all right.
Oh, this is your one.
Oh, is that, okay, all right.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. And you're done? And, all right, Steve?
I only had the 18. I had the same.
Okay. All right, Gary?
What I want to be clarified on is this, I know we talked about 200 acres, and I see it in here also, but I'm also puzzled about this 65% of this. I mean, my understanding, or what I was looking at was that the total job itself, that it involves everything for the solar farm site, would be contained in that 200 acres. I'm not
Is that the way you
talking,
wrote that? No.
I didn't write this.
Keith, I thought you
Which
wrote that
section? Let
up
me
there.
read you the final language. 'Cause I did have some back and forth.
Page 5, A2.
See, you're reading that again. This is the final draft here.
Yeah, that's the way that reads. So if you had 308 acres,
See it? You're reading.
you'd only have 200
That's,
acres that would be,
that's not the final draft you're reading right there. What's gonna be in there?
Do you have a copy of the most recent? Is your draft labeled 9/14/20 at the top?
Page 5.
page 5.
Gary, is yours dated 9/14/20?
Yes, yeah. I just
Yeah,
looked
make
at-
sure you're looking at,
He was
so they
looking at-
Yeah, I was
sent
looking at
two,
the,
you're looking at the final. Yeah,
The
let's
blue
look
one.
at the markup,
Yeah.
Red.
please.
yeah, okay, all right. Well, now, still my question would be 200 acres, but what's this 300 acres of total solar facility?
that's basically the parcel. So back to Dogwood.
Yeah, but I mean, wait a minute
So
now.
let me finish my
Okay, go
example.
ahead.
Dogwood was 76 acres of coverage on a 352 acre project site. So the way it was worded before, that would never be allowed.
Okay,
So what we're really concerned about is how much coverage, how much solar stuff, facilities, buildings, everything associated with the solar farm.
right. Well, that's, that was my concern too, but my concern was that everything should be consumed in that 200 acres.
No. You gotta have buffers and everything, so you gotta have other acreage.
Well, I
outside
know,
of it, too.
I see what you're talking about, the buffers and stuff, but I just want to be clarified that 200 acres is all that can be fenced in.
That's what this
Yes.
says.
Okay, all right. But just throw me a loop, I mean, the 65%.
So in order, if they came to the, in their planning phase, if they came to the determination they needed 200 acres of panels and inverters and associated facilities, then they would have to divide that by 65% to determine how big a project site they would need.
Yeah, in other words, be 65 acres of 100, 65 acres of 100 again, which would come to 130 acres.
Yeah, so they need that 308 total, and the rest of that site would not have any panels or anything on it.
A total of three, what?
300.
Panels?
No. They only get
Okay.
200. They only get 200. That's the coverage.
Yeah. But now, that's not including, is that including the buildings and
Yes.
everything that is necessary to operate this solar farm?
Inside the fence. And the coverage area is supposed to be in the definitions. That's covered in the definitions. So it should jive with the definitions.
So I think Gary makes a good point there. The layout of equipment, improvements, and structures. I would like us to add the substation and battery storage, because we're writing this ordinance for the foreseeable future. If battery storage becomes more viable, we might have buildings with batteries in them. And that needs to be listed in there. So I would propose a layout of equipment, air improvement structures, substation, and battery storage to be added to that list. So that's page 5, A2, first line, the layout of equipment, improvement structures, and substations, and battery storage. And you know why the substation's a big deal? Because they're big, ugly things and if they are sold subsequently to a public utility, we lose control of them. Isn't that true, Tracy?
Yeah, once they go to the state fair.
So we better make sure we count them in that area as well. Because she mentioned batteries could be, little boxes or a shipping container. There's already some numbers that have been flying through for the project in Spotsylvania, that they're gonna need a lot of large buildings covering several acres just for the battery storage. So I just want that in there to make sure it doesn't happen here.
Okay.
So if you don't have a problem with that, I'd like
You have that, Tracy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. What else? Yeah, Gary.
I have one other thing. If, just say that I owned a farm for 2,000 acres, and I was permitted for this 200-acre solar business, then I could turn around on that 2,000 acres and put up another one.
Is it still in there that you can't do it within
Is it
2
a clause
miles?
in that, Billy?
It's,
You can't.
having the.
I don't think you can do it.
Look
The way
at
it's
number
written.
4 on that same page.
Number 4. No utility
2 miles,
scale
one,
should be within 2 miles of the existing permitted, okay, all right, that answers my question.
Yeah, if you had it,
Okay.
long, if it was long, you might be able to
Right,
get it.
right, if it's long, right,
But you would not get it
yeah,
normally.
okay. That's all my questions for
All
right
right,
now.
thank you, Gary. Bill?
I'm pretty good with it.
Okay.
Appreciate all the action that we're taking on my suggestions so far. So I'm pretty good with it. I did wonder, now that Mr. Weekly's here, if he could kind of let us know about the discussion on the 65%, whatever it was that you had to communicate back to the consultants
So the-
before our last meeting, which you, as I recall, you maybe listened to, but you
I
didn't.
eavesdropped on, but I didn't
Right.
participate.
If you-
I was a
so-
citizen in that meeting.
A little background on that negotiation would be helpful to me.
So the 65%, what I got from them was that was kind of a industry best practice to make sure that they had enough room for all their buffers and wildlife corridors and everything, and they felt like anything lower than that, the lower you went with that ratio, you could end up with a smaller overall parcel. So 200 acres would be the 200 acres, and the overall parcel would start to close in on that. So they felt that 65% should stay where it is based on what the industry's been doing over the years, to give them room to locate things.
So there really wasn't any,
We didn't negotiate.
there wasn't any
a new-
negotiation.
A new percentage, no, and I don't know enough about it to be able to push back. I mean, we're relying on them and their expertise in planning with these things.
There's an email, a copy of an email that I specifically asked her where the 65% came from, and that's in your packet, so make sure you look over that, please.
An easy way of looking at it, I was thinking when I was trying to read through that, and I also had the same problem wanting to understand it. 65 is close to 66, 66 is roughly 2/3. So the way I was looking at it is if you have a parcel, the part inside the fence cannot be more than 2/3 of your parcel, and it cannot be more than 200 acres. Yeah? That's how I figured it in order for me to understand it, because I was getting confused with the dividing 65. So basically, Gary was saying you have a 200 acre parcel. you could not build more than 2/3, but it can also not be more than 200.
Did they think that we were asking to drop that below 60%?
No, I don't think they were. I think they were just cautioning us that we probably shouldn't deviate from it, that was a standard, and in no circumstances should it go less than the 60. That was the absolute floor of that ratio, but their strong recommendation was 65%.
Any indication of why you ended up having that conversation with them?
No, I think it was just the 65% came up, and I was curious. Why 65? You know, I'm curious.
I appreciate your efforts. I think that was very helpful. Thanks for the explanation. It seemed like I couldn't communicate that to them. It looks like you were able to do it. I appreciate that.
So we're still all good with the 65%?
I think that's, again, that's
Yeah,
not
I know.
changing the total. You know, I want to make sure that everybody understands that the total size of this project is 200 acres. But you're not going to count the open spaces, you're not going to count the buffers. And so this project is going to be bigger than 200 acres. And I want to kind of make sure everybody sees that it's, you know, we're not making an application for an entire project where the edge boundaries of that land is 200 acres. That edge project is going to be greater than 200 acres.
Because 200 stays to 200.
Because it's going to include things which, in a way, don't have to be protected or screened because they are part of the screening mechanism. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Kathy?
Well, I have 5 pages of typed up notes, so I don't know if you want to let me speak now or you want to let me speak later, because I'll get you here till midnight. So you might want to, the others might want to have a turn and I'll come back, because I've got a lot. I spent about 15 hours
All right.
on this, so.
Go ahead.
I'm good.
All right.
I've just got two little things that have come up in public comments, and the first thing came up, like the first day the Berkeley group was here. And it was something we hadn't considered. It was probably close to Jared as far as the prime farmland piece. Before we had either is or it isn't. It was 0 or 100. And there was nothing in between. And Ms. Cobb offered kind of a sliding scale. She threw out 30% as an option, which I thought was a good compromise option. Now, that number could be anything. It could be 10%, 70%, or the ultimate compromise, it could be 50%. But it does give some flexibility. It's probably something we should talk about. We really haven't debated that aspect of
All right, so are you saying talk about it tonight or talk about it when they're here?
it. My suggestion would be we kick it around tonight so that we use their time more efficiently when they're here.
Okay, all right. So let's go through that then. Well,
And the second thing, not to get us off track, the second thing is probably easy too, is that came up as a public comment about the limiting from the main highways, 211 and 340 as far as visual for tourists. That's a yes or no, we included or we don't, we included how far back. A mile, 2 miles, a half mile, quarter mile. Or did it make it?
where is it? Okay, it's taken up.
I think it was in and out, to be honest, I don't remember, maybe in and out. But not to get us off, that'll be part 2. The first thing is the front corner.
Okay. Well,
Mr. Weekly, how is it defined right now? Is it, cannot be on prime farmland or can be on prime farmland? How is it determined at the moment?
And this is my recollection, which is faulty at best. Before it said, basically, I don't think it was a prohibition, but should be avoided, and then that got struck. So it was, can't do it, and then there was no mention of it. So if we put something in there,
So it's silent on it right now.
that's my understanding,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
And then I guess what you're proposing is that we pick a percentage that it couldn't be above that percent, you could not have within the project above the percentage.
You couldn't
So
affect
we
more
go
than-
from silent on it in the ordinance to it can't, it must be under this percentage.
some tax. So we went from a total prohibition to, I guess, open season, and now we would give some limit, and it would be up to us to decide the limit. The limit, it still could be between 0 and 100, but I would recommend it be between 30 and 60.
I think it's reasonable, my take on it, Mr. Chairman, is that's a reasonable thing, but it's gonna be based on soils and the soil maps, and so there'll have to be an appeal. You'd have to be able to go out and prove that our current soil maps aren't accurate, which people should be able to do. So it should be, in other words, the difficulty with it being, the difficulty with this not being silent or remaining silent is that we would have to trust our current soil evaluation methods, which maybe we can do, but it would be nice if there was a way that someone could, sometimes our maps aren't very accurate. So that's a thought. Jared's probably,
So-
Jared.
Well,
This is where I've been struggling with the idea of putting a percentage on it because it comes back to land optimization usage. And soil types is the way to do that. To say you can only, let's say you take a 300 acre property. If 100 acres of it is prime farmland and 200 acres is not, and those are just rocky soils that no topsoil, nothing like that, they really don't have any use besides doing something else with. So, every property in the county is different, every 10 acres is different. They do have a machine out there that can test the electrical conductivity of the soil and can map them, and it can verify the FSA maps if needed, if it needs to come to that point. But to say, we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna limit it to 50%. I think that's missing a lot of things that need to be used considering the soil types. I mean, if you've got a 200 acre property and it's all prime soil, great topsoil, great fertility, and it's good for growing crops, grass, whatever, I'd hate to see that farmland go into a solar farm. If you've got a piece of property that's limestone rock, it's clay, has no fertility, it's not gonna hurt my feelings if it goes in a solar farm. So it's a little bit more cut and dry than saying you have a percentage. Now, I mean, you can look at the FSA maps, and there are lands that are declared prime farmland, and it is a measurable by their maps. But I have a hard time. You could pick a number. I don't know that any more number would be more right than the other. That's my thing. But I do agree that there needs to be some type of prime farmland protection. But to have a blanket plan may not be the best approach.
it's hard to identify it. I mean, do we have it identified? I can't find it. I've been trying to
Yeah, I
find it.
have it here, Mr. Chairman. I have
No,
it
a
here.
map. What I was
Yeah,
talking about.
there's Exhibit 8, page 37
Of the,
of the comp plan.
of the
Volume
comp
1,
plan.
Volume 1, page 37, 13. Volume 1, page 13, Exhibit 8, page 37. We have many, many protections in the comp plan for prime farmland. I
Okay,
counted a whole bunch of them.
would you read that then? If
Sure,
you had something
sure,
there?
So I was going to suggest that we reinstate the protection of prime farmland and farmland of statewide importance as clearly defined, designated, or protected in the comp plan, volume 1, page 13, exhibit 8, page 37, goal 3, policies 3.1 through 3.27, page 68 and 70, goal 5, policies 5.9, page 72, 5.14, page 73, volume 2, page 52. So there's a lot of mention in the comp plan. And I don't know if you all know this, I'm sure the farmers know this, but I didn't know. I look on the USDA website, farming in Page County is $141 million. It's our main economic driver. So I think that if we want to use best planning practices, how can we not protect it? You know what I'm saying? How can we be silent? It's our main economic driver, it's a huge source of income. I don't think we can be silent. I don't have any recommendation of how to protect it, but I think we need to protect prime farmland. And we have maps, we have things, we should be able to do it. And I'm not gonna suggest a limit because I'm not a farmer, but
Well, I think we're just trying to get it, identify prime farmland. That's the
Yeah.
hard part.
well.
I mean, I get it, you know,
So
and I
I'm
just
saying
read in here
maps that are
14% of the county is prime farmland, but I can't find a map on it.
I'll give you the map. Right here, private farmland.
Could you bring it up?
I don't have it on the computer.
Oh.
Sure. You have it in your manuals.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it looks up blown up, and is that what you're saying, Jared, that it's not accurate?
Chair, I said perhaps.
It's volume
Volume one?
137.
Page 37, exhibit 8.
So that's looking at it on a more generalized
Yeah.
basis. If you start breaking it down, like, let's just say farm by farm, one farm may have 10 different soil types on it.
Yeah, there's,
And it
there's,
may
there's
change.
a lot of farms that have clay. Some of it has some really excellent farm, topsoil.
And so-
Some soils around here are only good for like just raising cattle on it. And then some others are made for crops.
Where was that at again, Kathy? Can you give me the?
It's page 37, volume 1, page
Volume one.
37. I started looking at all these things because I wanted to be sure that it was
USDA has a wet soil survey. You can go down to the nearest 100 square feet of soil.
Now, the
Prime
dark
farmlands and
green-
dark green.
The dark green is the prime
They're
farmland.
trying to determine. They need to use the USDA and RSDS
Some of
wet
these,
soil
but not all
survey.
of it.
And how did they find that?
So it's
You're at the
spotty.
office, Farm Service Agency, or NRCS over in Harrisonburg.
You can request a copy of that, and we can look at it different land, different soil types from it.
But I guess if we're already telling them that if they have, let's say, a parcel of 300 acres to keep it easy, and they can only put 200 acres of prime farmland, of panels
Solar.
inside the fence, of solar, they should be able to put, what we're asking them is to concentrate the facilities, avoiding the prime farmland, right, if we put a percentage.
Well, there might be other factors in play, like slopes or something like that. If
True.
there's a wetland.
So 30% might be a little bit too restrictive. If we did 50, that's half and half.
Well, in the spirit of compromise, 50 would be the ultimate compromise, but it might be the right number. I don't know, I'm just opening up
So
the
no more than
discussion.
half of the parcel could be in prime
Are you
farmland.
wanting me to
Statewide
relay
farm-
this to them?
And I'm sure
Are you
we've all
wanting
got
me to relay
different,
this to them?
I think
I'm
you
sure we've all got
should.
different opinions. I'm
We
sure
need to
Jared would
know.
like to see a lower number, somebody else might want to see a higher number. It's just to get the conversation started.
Well, and as you look at the
Mr.
map, you
Chairman.
see that it's really spotty as to where the prime farmland is. So part of the farm, maybe a very small part of it may be prime farmland, and the other part, or maybe a large part of it is prime farmland, and a little bit. So how do we,
If you
It's
had,
very-
if you had the specific site,
Well,
you'd have your best chance to determine
can we do it
what the
that way?
percentage need to be.
the-
Without the site, you're,
Can we do it that?
Well, here's the other thing.
if you think that map's spotty, wait till you walk on the property,
Yeah,
because that's gonna be all over the place.
the other thing that we can do is, I mean, the Berkeley group is used to wording, crafting language. If we agree that maybe we want to have some flexibility, we voice our concerns through Tracy and tell them, hey, here's the concerns that we have about the local variability even on a single parcel. And how would we address that with the sliding scale and see what they have to say.
Yeah, like identify the land first and then determine,
You have to have language in the ordinance, you can't go into it.
No, I get-
We'll know
well-
it when we see it.
But gentlemen, the language in the ordinance said, utility scale solar facilities shall minimize and avoid locating on farm, farmland, and soils, with soils, categorized as prime farmland and farmland of state importance. It doesn't say they're totally prohibited, it says minimize and avoid. Could we say, could we
Well-
give a range
But here,
between 30 and 60?
so if you, I work with contractors all the time. If you tell a contractor, you know, you can put between 1 and 4 gallons of water in your concrete, they're gonna put 4. You know, they're gonna push it to the limit, whether it's top or bottom, to maximize their return. So my recommendation is one number, that's the number. And you don't, that's the max that you do. Then it's enforceable, there's no ambiguity about it. Now, what that number is, I cannot tell you. And that's what we need to decide, and we probably need the Berkeley group to help us along with some supplementary language that helps support that based on some of the things that Jared brought up.
so this is what we bring up at that meeting.
No, this is what we tell
Or I mean,
Tracy
right,
to
she
tell
brings,
them
they will
tomorrow,
get it up to us.
so they can be thinking about it and come back to us with maybe some guidance so that we don't just spring it on them on Tuesday.
Right,
and-
well, we need to talk about it. We don't have the answers tonight, so.
So we'd like to reinstate the protection of farmland, and we're asking them to help us with some numbers.
Some flexibility is what we're looking for, and she brought up the sliding scale, and she threw out a number of 30%, and said, but that number's up to you, and Jared brought up some good points that maybe it's not as easy as just putting a
Right,
number
it's
on
not.
there.
So 30% is less than 1/3.
Yeah.
That's pretty restrictive.
It is, so maybe
Should
it's,
we make it less restrictive?
Mr. Turner, you have a,
I would consider 50 anyway.
50?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I was going, but that's
I mean,
just,
Anybody-
No, that's
that's
just
just right
the
now.
compromise.
Most of the prime
there.
farmlands along the river, along the highway, it's already restricted already. I mean, it's, prime farmland is along the rivers and places like that. I mean, you go out here to my farm, they can probably put it anywhere. Because it's rocky and.
yeah,
Yeah, I grow rocks, yeah,
not that I am.
But
yeah.
prime farmland is mostly along the river. You can see right here, along the river. It's all, just about all prime farmland, except for forestry.
I don't think anybody here objects to protecting prime farmland. I think the reason we went silent is because we didn't know how to do it.
I think silent is a mistake.
I
I think silent
don't
is
hear
the
any
opposite.
argument to protecting prime farmland. The question is how to do it, of course. And if we're picking a number, I'd let the farmers in our group decide where we're gonna go.
50%, like, on some farms, 50% would be too much.
Well, I think that's what Jared's saying.
And,
But the farms along the river, mostly not within a mile of the transmission lines. So they would be putting
Well, they're also in the
the
flood
facility anyhow.
Yeah.
So,
And
I
that's
mean,
the-
they're
But that
bought in.
shows you that
And that's
most
the
of
other
it
part of the
is
problem,
not
is
prime.
if you get too restricted, you may find, and I would hope that our consultants will spend some time determining that at the end of this, we have sites. And we don't have an ordinance which creates no sites.
Tracy,
That's a question.
did they ever work on that map available based on the distance from the transmission lines and if you, and the
The
slopes?
maps will be provided Tuesday that they and Josh do.
Okay, all
It wasn't appropriate for me to introduce
Maybe-
them tonight
maybe
because I
we-
haven't been able to explain them.
right. Sure. I
Not
understand.
to have them have to adjust everything they presented, that's not my wish, but in the end, this not being silent on prime farmland will impact where you could do this. Maybe not greatly, but a little bit. And so that needs to be in the mix, because they were hopefully going to assure us that when we get finished with an ordinance, it is possible to have projects.
Well, I think we made some headway, at least we're talking about it. We didn't talk about it.
So what am I specifically taking back to them before Tuesday? I need that.
Maybe that we'd like to reinstate the protection of prime farmland? Or
With-
we're just
And what would be
hesitant
the-
about a number?
We like the idea of her sliding scale, but we probably need some supplementary language that takes into account the variability on individual parcels.
We could say let's say 50%, or whichever number you feel comfortable. I'm taking yours, Mr. Turner, 50%. Unless the applicant can prove, and they can go to the Department of, what are it, you know, the one in soils and whatever they're called in Harrisonburg. You know, there's a department, Virginia
Soil and Water Conservation District?
Soil and Water Conservation District, unless they can prove that their land is, you know, less or not, you
That
know.
was the right of appeal that I mentioned.
Exactly, but put the burden on them to prove that their land should not be restricted. Would that work?
That could work.
Yeah, because it has a government agency.
No, it doesn't work?
I wouldn't go with that because I've never been turned down on anything we're trying to do. Every one of them has ever come out to me and says, yeah, you can do that.
You mean from them?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Oh. Well, still,
Well, we could
But
ask
still.
them to specify, I'm sorry, this mask is driving me insane. But we could ask them to say, okay, we're looking at the map on Page County, and that parcel seems to be, or not to be in prime farmland. Can you confirm that? You know what I'm saying? Get a specification from the offices that have the more detailed maps. Would that work?
I don't know enough about it to say yes or no.
At least it's something workable, right?
it is something workable and it is a government agency. And it's not just somebody, you know, it is somebody with credibility.
But at least
And
we have
neutrality.
something in the ordinance that says that we care about our farmers and that we care about our number one source of income. Because if not, it doesn't look good.
I mean, the only way you could do it is if you want to get more specific, say 50% unless you can prove through soil maps or by testing, you know, then we would have to make a list of these are the acceptable soil types that you could build on. And, you know, you'd have to spell out the different soil types which would be allowed and which ones would not be allowed. But that,
But don't we have maps
But
in
they're
there
not
for soil
doing that.
types?
It is there.
They're quite complicated. I try to read through them.
Yeah,
It's
you-
over my head.
It's over my head,
It's over all our heads.
you know.
Yeah, they're here. They're in volume 2.
Because, you know, like you said, some of us, we grow rocks, some of us we do have some, we may have some good land, but I think we're gonna have to go by what, what the government agency has to say on that. I can agree with that, the 50% and/or if you can prove otherwise, or go through the
So
soil conservation.
50%
people.
unless, how could we say, unless,
I think my thought is that it's still 50% if that's the number, but my concern would be that the map would not be accurate and they should have a right to appeal the quality of their soil. That really doesn't, if upon appeal, what they're just verifying is that they have 50%, nobody's gonna do that, I mean, obviously, but if the piece of property is not prime farmland, even though we consider it on the map to be, they have the right to show that it's not.
True.
so we can say unless the applicant can prove that the
At
parcel in question isn't in
And
prime
at their
farmland?
cost, if they can prove it. I think that's the reasonable appeal.
The parcels,
Kind of takes care of the fact that these maps are pretty small that we're looking at.
so they're not protected, so they're not what, prime farmland and farmland of statewide importance, is that it? Do we want to ask how they can prove it, or we don't want to get into that?
That might be a Berkeley group question. I don't know if we're supposed to.
Let
tell
them
the
come
avenue,
up
just
with that
put the burden
answer.
on them. I mean, they can hire a private consulting soil scientist also. We tell them to
So
hire a
we could
licensed
say-
land surveyor, we tell them to hire a professional engineer, professional geologist that are hired also.
Sure.
Yeah, we might have to feather that language, put a few protections.
Okay, so let's submit that to them.
Because, I mean, that's not the work of an attorney, that's the work of a, like you said,
It's a professional geologist or a certified soil scientist.
so we can say unless the applicants can prove through third-party testing, through third-party accredited testing or something like that.
Let's start with that, and we'll probably have to add some additional language to it, but at least that'll get the goal. Did you get the gist of that?
You got all that? All right. All right.
And then the other thing, I think it's come up several times in public comments about 340 and 211 and trying to limit how close it was to that since it's the corners that people come into the county, it's highly visible. And I know we've had varying distances, you know, can't see it at all, which I think is be tough. You know, come across 211 from Messina Mountain. You can see it anywhere, but I think at least some distance. Whether it's 5
Where is
miles
that
or-
in there? Is there,
I think it was in there one time when I got.
It was-
Yes,
there
it
was-
Number 10 with the historic, and cultural and all those things, and I think we didn't only throw the baby out with the bathwater, we threw the whole bathtub. So I had actually taken all the different concepts out of 10, and this is this document that I made up here, and I separated them. There was the view shed, the historic and cultural resources, the forested areas, and the natural resources, environmentally sensitive areas. And for my own education, I looked up in the comp plan to see how they were protected, so I've got all the numbers and all the references for you if you're interested. And I tried to figure out why. So the prime farmland we're trying to protect, you know, I was thinking, why are they in our comp plan? So the prime farmland, we're protecting our main economic driver to the tune of 141 million. And the scenic view shed in protecting what they call our scenic byways, which 340 and 11 are, we're trying to protect a $73 million revenue from tourism. So I can see why they'd be protected. So, you know, we could insert something to say, in order to protect scenic corridors and view sheds, and I'm not talking about view sheds from the park, just for the scenic corridors. Utility scale solar facilities shall not be located within whatever number we think is good of federal highways, US 340 and 211, except where natural topography completely shields an entire facility from view. You know, like on 340, when you have those sort of banks that are real high, you wouldn't be able to see anything. So that was my suggestion. Because then again, why are we not protecting our main economic drivers? I mean, there's a lot of jobs in tourism. There's a lot of jobs in, you know, people that come to cabins, people come visit the caverns. 60% of the traffic to the caverns comes through 340.
if I can interject here. I can understand the issue about 211,
Well,
because you're
we're-
coming down a mountain and you're
Well-
gonna see solar from wherever.
We're never gonna fix that. I mean, you're up high, you're never gonna
Right.
fix that. Same thing with, certain areas of 340, like going through Raleighville. You're seeing down into that valley. You're never gonna fix that. I think it's more like your Jarrett's. It's all flat out through there. You can minimize it. You may not eliminate it completely, but you can push it back far enough, maybe.
So if you
With the
push it back
screen.
far enough and you push a buffer, your line of vision, you know,
I think the thought was, and I'm taking into account, you know, just feedback we've gotten from speakers. Like the one up at, I forget if it's Clark or Frederick, or it's where all three of them come together there at White Coast, or Dinosaur Land. They're right up on the road. And I think that's what they're trying to do.
But, all right, I've been there, and yeah, there is a fence there, and you would, if there wasn't an opening there, you wouldn't even know it, because you can't see over the fence. Right? Is that true? I mean, tell me if I'm wrong about
It's
that.
been a while since I've been up there, but I thought you could see them pretty easily.
You can.
Can you? Okay, I thought I was right there at the intersection. All I could see is where there was an opening one time. I didn't see out over above it, but that's gonna be a tough, because every piece of land is different. You know, like you say, Riley, there's places there, Peabody Sours old place, then there's other places that are above.
Yeah, but we're not saying they gotta be back so far that you can't see them. I think we're just talking about a set distance to minimize it. Because there are areas where you'll never fix it.
And if you had a provision that says, you know, I accept where the natural topography shields the entire facility from view, there's a lot of areas where that wouldn't even apply.
What about a large percentage and not total?
Well, if it was, I mean, there are places in Raleighville where 340's down and everything else is high,
Mm-hmm.
where it wouldn't matter, you never see it.
Right, I agree. But there are places there where you can still see it from the road. So that's why I'm asking for a
No, but-
percentage.
No, I think in that case, we're
Like a
just saying it
95
would be
or-
a set distance. It'd be a set distance. If you're up high, there's no distance that you'll ever mitigate. You'll never mitigate it. I think the wording that we're tossing around here is X amount from the roadway or where natural topography shields it. So if you're in a deep cut and your site is at the top of the cut, you wouldn't have to be back, you know, X
Yeah,
number of feet.
you make an
because you'll never
exception.
see it.
That's no
You'd
problem.
waive the setback.
But the word you used was total, and and it's not
Oh,
always total.
You mean when I say except where natural topography completely shields the entire
Yes.
facility
Then
from
you
view?
waive the setback.
Okay, so we could say completely shields or shields facility from view.
Okay, I can go.
But that's just the exception.
That's for the, yeah, that's.
No, no, no,
That's just an
we
exception,
understand,
yeah.
we understand.
So I guess the question is, there are two questions. One, it was in, I think, at one time, we got taken out, and it keeps getting brought up, so I'm just bringing it up because it keeps showing up in public
The
comment.
only reason why I was eliminated before is the group with a bunch of other things. All those
Yeah.
other things made it impossible to build, so it was taken out. I don't think anybody here objects to decking view shed from the roads.
From the roads, we
From the
never did
roads.
from the park.
I think the moment
We
you
never-
From the
go
views.
up in elevation, classically, we
Yeah.
have avoided that here because we live in an area that's very up and down. Very, very up and down, so.
Yeah, I mean, we got into that same discussion with the junkyard.
So I think, Mr. Weekly, what I hear you saying is that there would be a distance from the road.
There would be a distance.
And
So,
it could
number
be,
one.
and it could be waived if the topography was concealing.
Exactly.
And not all roads, only the scenic byways, 340 and
Just those
211,
two. Well,
the entry corridors.
Well, scenic, don't use scenic byways because
That's an
they're
official
very
designation.
small roads, very tiny roads in our county.
No, I had,
Most of them are numbered 615, by the way, for some reason, which goes everywhere.
Would it be okay to say federal highways, US 340 and 211?
I think it'd be
Yeah, I
better
say
to
US,
identify. that.
US 340 and US 211.
Yeah.
Specific.
That's,
Okay,
that's my.
so
So I
we
guess
need to come up with a number.
We need a
So
number.
if everybody's cool with that, now comes the fun part, is what's the number?
All right,
Is it 100 feet or is it a mile?
We came up with that one time.
What was it before?
is it 200?
So in the ninth
I've heard
draft.
200, I've
Yeah.
heard 600, I've heard 20,000, so.
20,000 would be like 4.5 miles.
Yeah, I know.
which
But
would
I've
be-
heard different numbers thrown
I
out.
think 20,000 is a bit much.
So in the ninth draft that had the consensus of the planning commission a year ago, I'm looking for it here. What did it say?
200.
Quarter mile.
Oh, yeah, quarter mile.
Yeah, it was a
Quarter
quarter
mile.
mile,
Quarter
that's what
mile.
it was.
I'd be okay with
Quarter
that.
mile.
I'd be okay with that. Quarter mile's what, 1200 feet?
1,320 feet.
Thank you.
what if the topology, what if trees can shut out some of that, or almost all of that view shed? I mean, you're trying to stop, the view shed is 1,300 feet, whereas 200 feet could do the same thing, or 300 feet could do the same thing as that. Why would, you know, what's a realistic or decent number? Maybe it is a quarter mile, but we need to talk about that number.
So if I can just interject something, when I was, I had to go back to Tracy for this. The ninth draft, you know, I couldn't remember what it was. And then I realized that the reason that the ninth draft was so detailed is because at the time, the Planning Commission had not been mandated to write a solar ordinance, and the Berkeley group had not been hired. So you guys on the Planning Commission were trying to come up with protections in the comprehensive plan so that there'd be at least something. So there was a lot of suggested language, and at the time, the ninth draft had the consensus of the Planning Commission. So I was thinking if it was good enough then, it should be good enough now.
As a part of the plan,
Yes.
not as a part of the ordinance.
Right.
Well, the ordinance is supposed to be
But,
on
yes,
the
I'm just,
plan.
I know that's a small thing, but
Yeah.
we weren't working on the ordinance, we were working on the plan.
Well, all the more, in my
Right.
opinion.
And it's in the plan.
No, there is no protection of the,
Well, I know, but
view
I mean, the
shed.
concept, I'm sorry, you're right. You're exactly right.
So anyhow, I have the ninth draft here if anybody wants to look at it, because I had to go back and read it to refresh my memory.
I think we're somewhere between 200 feet and a quarter mile.
Okay. So,
I would say it shouldn't be less than a quarter mile, so I would say 200 feet and half a mile.
What's our minimum setback, Tracy?
For what?
Like from property lines and,
For a house?
no, for this. I'm too lazy to leaf through there and find it.
Is it 200 with a house and 150
Yeah, I thought it was
without?
150 and 200.
Yeah, so it should probably be more than the minimum setback. How much more? That's something we'll have to agree on.
200 feet from existing dwellings, 150 feet from all other
It
property
should probably be a
lines.
little more than that.
It should be more.
Confined feeding is 600 feet.
Poultry farm,
Open
1,600.
farm, 1,600.
Yeah.
We're all over the place, but
Well, I'm
we
just-
1,600?
so
Wow.
we get to choose.
So in the end, a quarter of a mile is not as big as I thought it was, the poultry. But a lot of them are a whole lot closer to the edge
Well,
of
that
the
was
road.
before
Oh, that.
They're all grandfathered.
Because I know I use metric for most of my life, but I didn't think I was that much.
Can't tear those down.
I know.
Well, let's
So
go around the
what-
room.
Well, okay.
Don, what do you think?
I agree with Kathy.
Okay.
She said,
Mike? Steve?
I think
Steve,
it ought
sorry.
to be the quarter of a mile unless they can prove that they can
Not be
cover,
seen
not be
from the road.
seen for less footage.
We have a problem shielding, that came up in it, Tracy, with the zoning consultants at the meeting in Stanley. A lot of people were complaining that we couldn't protect the, what do they call, auto salvage yards, and that, haven't you taken somebody to court because they weren't properly screened? I don't think we need to go there, if you don't mind me saying that, Steve, because we're not gonna be able to enforce it.
Well, I was thinking of the banks and stuff that.
Oh, yeah, the
can't see,
topography.
That if
Yes.
that allowed it, that they wouldn't have to be the quarter of a mile.
Yes, unless the topography,
Yes.
I agree.
Okay. Gary?
I'm just gonna go with a quarter mile right now. I mean, we're not setting nothing in stone, but that's my personal opinion.
Okay. Quarter mile?
Oh, that's the majority.
Quarter
I know
mile?
yours.
Yeah,
All right, there's where we are then.
I'm fine with quarter.
Okay. that's what we give to the.
Kathy, can you repeat that language that you all agreed upon
Sure.
before?
Sure, the language that I came up with is, in order to protect scenic corridors and view sheds, utility scale solar facilities shall not be located within within a quarter mile of federal highways, US 340 and 211, except where natural topography completely shields the entire facility from view.
Would you mind taking out completely?
No,
Yeah,
where natural topography shields entire facility from view.
Thank you, Ben.
Now, the only thing I'll ask about that is you got US 340, what about US Business 340?
Oh, I never thought about that.
is there any transmission lines over there?
Business 340 is excluded anyhow, because that's within a mile of town, isn't it?
No.
No?
Not in the county.
Huh?
Goes from,
But are there transmission
You know,
lines
that's a
over
good
there?
point. I hadn't thought about
The
that.
transmission lines that run there are within a mile of town. Although,
I don't know if any place you could build it on 340.
Because it's all trees, isn't it, over there? Just,
Too hilly,
yeah, it's well over that.
rivers there.
But
So we could
there
put,
might be still ones.
we could
by-
add US 340, including business, and 211. Federal highways, US 340,
doesn't hurt
and
to include it.
yeah, including business.
I think that would have been.
I would say US 340, comma, US 340 business, comma, and US 211. Give them the correct designation.
Well, yeah, we can add that.
All right,
That was it for me.
all right, now we're here for your long one.
You're here till midnight, guys, okay?
I hope not.
Hey,
Our live recording stops
You
at 10.
you know I've already said that
I'll
there's a
hear.
time limit for me tonight, so when
Yes,
my
okay.
time is up, I'll.
All right,
sometimes
so-
have to leave.
I'd like to build upon something Mr. Holstinger brought up last time that was brought up by members of the public. I think it would be nice if we reinstated the protection of historic and cultural resources. And I was a little nervous at first at that, thinking, how are we gonna define that? And to my surprise, well, not really. I looked up in the comp plan, and there's a list of cultural sites in Page County. There's a list as identified by the Natural Registry of historic sites, and it's right here. It's a complete list, Catherine's Furnace, Fort Egypt, Fort Long, I mean, they're all listed here, so it's not like we're opening the door for all kinds of things. So I was thinking it would be good if we could protect them.
Wouldn't they be protected? I mean.
It was in
You
that number
wouldn't-
10 that we threw out.
I thought we had that in.
No, we don't.
Because
It
I
was
thought
thrown
that,
out.
if, we wouldn't allow anything like that to be built on top of a historic site or a cemetery or something like that.
So my suggested language for that was utility scale solar facilities shall not be adjacent to historic and cultural resources as defined and listed in the comp plan. Meaning there's a list here, we're not exactly arbitrary. And if I put my glasses on, I could read those to you.
Well, how close are you talking
I was
about?
gonna say, that would be my only thing, instead of using the word adjacent, we probably ought to define
Put on
a
the
distance.
Okay, adjacent meaning we don't want them immediately next to them. If you want to make it even more protection, yeah, then you can add a buffer, that'd be even
I'd say
cooler.
within X feet, put a number on it. Was adjacent, like, well, hey, I'm
I mean, adjacent
50
means
feet from it,
immediately
so
next
50
door.
feet from it, exactly, so.
I can agree with 50 feet. I mean, it may, it's like a cemetery. If there's a cemetery in the middle of one of these protected, you ain't gonna build on top of that cemetery.
No.
And so,
So in the comp plan, they're listed, I'll give you an example. Historic landmarks, and they're all defined. Aventine Hall, John Beaver House, Catherine Furnace, Fort Egypt, Fort Long, Graves Chapel Cemetery, Heston Strickler House, Jeremy's Run Site, Kanawha, Locust Grove, Rory Downtown Historic District, there's a whole bunch of things.
I don't think anyone's arguing that.
No, we're not.
We
So
just
you're
have to-
okay with that?
We
Okay.
just have to know the distance.
Well, that's even better than what I was asking. I was
Well,
asking for just.
Yeah, no
more
one
feet.
objected to protecting it. It was linked together with a bunch of other things. And in the process, we just haven't gotten to it.
And that's why I separated them, and there's two more if you're interested. So adjacent, so instead of saying adjacent, not within,
X number of feet.
Somebody was suggested 50 feet.
should we do 200, the same as the houses? Why should the historic sites not be afforded the same protection as the places where people live?
I didn't throw out.
I was just kind of joking with the 50 feet. So, I mean, I think 200, I mean, that would be consistent and working with what we've done.
Shall not be located within 200 feet, okay. Is everybody okay with that, or do we want to go?
Is that all right? All right, move on. Okay.
So to be consistent, I was trying to look at bringing back the things that we had excluded in number 10. And a couple of other things. So prime farmland, we've looked, viewshed we've done, historic we've looked. The next one is forested areas. It's not my it's not my area of expertise. So it said USS facilities shall be located outside forested area to preserve forest resources. That's what it said. I was suggesting to add as identified and defined in comp plan and by Virginia Department of Forestry. We could also add a percentage limit as was suggested for farmland protection.
And the reason that one fell away is because while there's a great need to keep forests, I didn't want to be in a situation where we had to say you couldn't cut trees, or you couldn't harvest trees, selective harvesting. And of course, the idea was someone wanted to put a facility in, they just go in and cut the trees, and it's not forested anymore.
So we want a percentage, right?
So what I was saying is
Percentage.
If you cut the trees, it would be zero.
Yeah, I mean, you cut a forest down and without any kind of permit or anything.
Unless we're gonna say
Go in
you
and timber
can't
your
cut,
property.
unless you're gonna say you
If it's
can't
in forest.
cut trees.
It's a certain
Yeah.
amount you cannot disturb it. I think it's an acre or something like that. Anymore, isn't it?
Unless you're,
I think it's 10,000 feet.
Yeah, it's a percentage that you can't.
You can't disturb more than 2,500 square
Yeah.
feet without
so
a
you can't do
permit.
clear cutting,
Yeah.
yeah.
Clear
Without a
cutting.
permit.
If you do more than an acre, it requires ENS and stormwater.
Yeah.
Because I was going to suggest that we add on deforestation for the purpose of developing a utility scale solar facility is specifically prohibited. And I guess we'd have to define deforestation. Because that's what they did in Spotsylvania. They took down a beautiful forest and built a solar facility. And I think we need to be careful, and we could also make an exception for low-quality forests as defined by the Virginia Department of Forestry. Anyhow, I just wanted to kick it around, see what you guys thought.
I've had my say on it, I'll do whatever, I'll vote with majority.
So do we deal with a percentage of, like, no more than 5% trees on a piece of land, or what?
I think that was harder. I think because if you've got a piece of land, you've got these little post trees here and there.
But if we
But
say.
that's not really a
But they're not
forest,
forest.
though.
See, that's where we had the issue, we were trying to define what was a forest. That was.
I mean, a
was
bump
the
of
issue.
trees, is that an acre of trees? No, I guess we could do it that way. If it was over an acre or over,
To be classified
10
as
acres.
forest, I think you have to have 25 acres of property to get it.
to get a tax break.
Tax
and all that,
break,
Yeah,
so-
so,
At
So
least-
that's
20
why I
or
wrote-
25 acres, you have to have that to get
At
a
least-
so that would be
at least
considered a
at least
forest
20 acres.
to the
20
to the
acres.
tax
20
people.
So we would have to add forest to our definitions.
So can we say as identified and defined in the comp plan and by Virginia Department of Forestry? And what are those rules? Are they county rules or are they state rules,
On
Steve?
DEQ, and
The 20 acres, I think that's the county rule.
That's a land use.
Land
It's a
use.
land
County
use
code.
requirement, yeah.
to be safe, we ought to define it.
So we can put a definition, we could add it in definitions, right? a forested area is considered,
Well, the
Low
tax
level?
is 20 acres, right?
Is it,
Yes.
is it
25.
density measured
20.
20.
with
All right.
forest, or, I mean, it's number of trees per square foot, you know, something.
And then anything below that would be,
You have to have
would
a
not be
forester tell
considered
you that
forest.
you have a forest now.
That's why we require a forestall plan.
I'm aware of that,
Yeah.
That's
This
what I thought,
is
right?
getting pretty complicated.
yeah.
We all think we know what a forest is, and we can't agree. on what a forest is.
$20 per site to get it into land use. Per,
Well, then leave the definition of forest up to the forester.
because if we say as defined by Virginia Department of Forestry, don't they have those kind of definitions? I mean, can we not trust them?
Now, you gotta have a certified forester tell you, right?
yeah. And you've only got like
Contact mine.
one, I think one in the county,
Yeah, Dave.
Dave.
So,
He's probably not gonna be doing it much longer.
so can we say as defined by a certified forester
Sure.
and the Department of Forestry?
Well, actually, he goes out and certifies when people's, he certifies land use for trees and stuff like that, so
Okay.
yeah, that'd be fine.
So, and by Virginia Department of Forestry, does he work for them?
No,
No,
no, he does not.
On the-
We don't wanna
He's
double
a
up.
private contractor.
If he's certified, then his certification bounds him, so.
So as identified and defined in the comp plan and instead of Virginia
So
Department of
just say
Forestry
certified,
and by
certified forester,
a certified forester,
and then state certified
a
forester.
state certified forester,
It should be.
A Virginia state.
a Virginia. Yes, not
We
certified
don't
in
want somebody
Hawaii.
who don't.
Let's keep on adding to it.
So are you okay to say reinstate initially proposed text, which is, I read, USS facilities, USS meaning utility scale solar, facilities shall be located outside forested areas to preserve forest resources, add for clarity, as identified and defined in comp plan and by a Virginia state certified forester. Is that acceptable? Or do you want to put a percentage limit as Bernie was suggesting?
Well, I think we leave it up to the forester.
They're
Because
not
he's
gonna
gonna tell you
let
if it's
certify
forest or
acre
not.
anyway.
And he's gonna actually look at the wood. If it's old forest, he's gonna tell you it's forest. But if it's the.
Bunch of paradise trees.
If it's a bunch of paradise trees, he may say, no, it's not. So just because there's trees on it doesn't mean they aren't gonna cut them down, because it could just be a bunch of stuff that's grown there in the last 10 or 15 years.
So we don't put the percentage limit, okay? And would you be okay to make an exception to this rule for low-quality forests as defined by Virginia Department of Forestry? You know, somebody who's, or are we just trying to protect the good quality? Or we want to protect it all?
Well, see, you can get a place around here that where if you have a piece of pasture land and somebody doesn't do anything on it for 10 or 15 years, all of a sudden it turns into shrub.
Oh, yeah, it turns
And
into
so
olive
it's,
olives.
it
Where I
turns into a
live,
bunch
yeah.
of stuff, but it's not necessarily forest. You see what I mean?
So that wouldn't be qualified.
So that's why we leave it the way
Okay,
the
so
other
forget
way.
about the exception?
Yeah, I think sometimes less is more.
Okay, I was
We'll
just
write
trying to make
lots
it
of words.
a little more, and would you like to add that that deforestation for the purpose of developing a utility scale solar is specifically prohibited? Think of Spotsylvania County where they did over, what is it? How much is it in Spotsylvania? Does anybody know?
3,500 acres
Yeah.
total was the project.
It was just crazy. They took that whole forest down. So that was my point. Deforestation for the purpose of developing a utility scale facility is specifically prohibited.
Yeah, but we only go allow them to do 200 acres, probably they will only go in and take 3,500 acres down.
Oh, I agree. But would you want that, so here's the question, would we be okay for them to take 200 acres of forest?
No.
Only if
No,
it was-
but we've already said.
Only if it was the only place in Page County you could do it. If we've gotten it down to the point where there's so little available, then you probably would
Okay, so forget about that?
consider it, you know. It depends on the situation there. Again, it's fine to have it there, I support this effort.
Okay.
I fear it will make no difference, because I'll make an application, cut the trees to make it prime farmland or less, they'll be gone, and it will no longer need this, it will no longer need it. But it won't hurt to have it there, because someone may not know to do that.
Yeah, I was thinking, we're all trying to, all our names are gonna be associated with this forever on. I'd like to think we're really doing our best, so, So the last
We
point.
are doing our best.
Exactly. So the last point was the natural resources and environmentally sensitive areas. So by that, I think in the comprehensive plan, they're identified and listed. I can give you all the references. And I think they're really as they pertain to groundwater, because that's what's protected in the comp plan. So I don't know how you feel about added utility scale solar facility shall not be, and again, I used adjacent, we can put a buffer to natural resources and environmentally sensitive area as defined and listed in the comp plan. Alternatively, set a buffer distance.
Are you considering the environmentally sensitive areas to be karst formations and limestone,
Sinkholes.
sinkholes?
That's already in there.
Is that one of the things you're thinking?
Is sinkholes in there?
You cannot build, you can't build around it.
Because that's
Is it in here?
an issue.
No, it's not in here, but it's in,
In pretty much practice, right?
Practice.
It's practice, yeah, you wouldn't build around it.
Because there's a lot of sinkholes, right?
Oh,
And there's
yeah.
things,
Well, yeah, that's our point, is if you're including karst formations. you're
let me look
talking-
in
you're
the
talking-
comp plan and see what it says here. Volume 1, chapter 368 to 81. Let's see. 68. I must have misnumbered it. Chapter 3, volume 1, chapter 3. Water, here we go. Protect and manage the county's surface and groundwater resources. That's goal 4, page 71. Encourage best management practices to prevent potential groundwater pollutions. Discourage, that's anyhow, there's a whole goal to protect water, and that was what I was thinking we should protect. It also says in the, it's also defined in volume 2 that we should protect groundwater. So I leave it up to you.
Isn't that already taken care of from Tracy when, I can't remember, she came in at the stormwater? or-
Erosion and sediment inspector.
No, what was her name that was here?
Kelly.
Kelly, yes.
The erosion and
yes,
sediment
yeah.
inspector.
She identified, she talked about all this. And it is protected, all this is protected by the county already, right?
Yeah.
It requires permits.
Yeah, so
You can't.
We'll
do
have
we
an
need to put
ENS.
any more in it?
It'll have an ENS and a stormwater plan.
Yeah, so it's already in the stormwater plan.
Yeah, but that's just stormwater. That doesn't say,
Yeah, but are we talking on-site or adjacent to site?
I don't know, it's up to you guys.
But it'll have on-site,
protecting-
it'll
Yes.
capture
Well,
and,
I mean, I know we talked about on-site, but is this, when we're referring to natural resources and environmentally sensitive areas, is that referring to adjacent properties besides the site?
it's talking about adjacent,
That's right.
but you could also put, somebody could start a junkyard. Somebody could start, put in a
So,
trailer.
yeah, the way our water is around here, one guy that's 2 miles away affects the guy.
Right, I was
Down
just
the
trying to
road.
get a point of reference, which,
I don't see, how would you put a point of reference? Because we don't even know where the
DEQ's is 200 feet from the buffers and,
well, we would stick with what DEQ has.
yeah. know that there's a.
So you think they'll go through the DEQ when they go to the permit, that'll be
Absolutely.
They have
Yeah, they have
identified at that point?
Absolutely.
So you're saying that it's, so maybe we just say as per DEQ?
We don't
just
have
make-
to.
It's required.
It's already in
State
there.
law.
Yeah, when Kelly came, she explained.
Yeah, it's all state, that's all state code.
So you think putting that in the ordinance is redundant, is what I'm
Yes,
hearing you say?
yeah.
It's already in here, DEQ permits. Page 3.
So what we're saying is page 3?
Yeah.
And 5.
Permitting rules.
Substantial compliance. It was my understanding that the DEQ review was just very summary, that they did not go into big deal. No?
DEQ's paying the butt. If you get ready to submit plans to them.
If you look under 12578, under the conditions, we also say it has to adhere to local, state, and federal requirements regarding erosion and sediment control. And the next one says stormwater management. It's under 12578.
So that's covered.
So does that also cover the drinking water in my well or in your well or anybody in the county regardless of stormwater? No. Because I guess that's what I was thinking here.
As much as anything else.
Yeah, I don't see how you could do that.
As much as anybody that.
You're saying as much as any other kind of development, is that what you're saying?
You're right,
Absolutely. Or
right.
spraying
Probably.
Every house that
Or
goes in, every
pesticides.
subdivision.
Probably agriculture is the largest threat.
Yeah.
So I was wondering
And
why
our water resources are quick recharge wells that comes from limestone formations, karst structures, sinkholes. I mean, we're replete with them. And we probably have a lower risk from solar than we do from agriculture. But
maybe it would be interesting to ask the Berkeley group, Tracy, why they had put that in the first place. Because it was in number 10 that was struck out. I was wondering what their thoughts were. Because presumably they knew from best practices. See, it says environmentally sensitive areas there, and that's where I got that from. And since I did not know where to start with that, I went to the comp plan, and I found the comp plan. So maybe ask them what they meant by that.
So, I'm sorry, does the comp plan identify environmentally sensitive areas?
Well, insofar as it does with stormwater and things like that. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what they meant, because they're the ones who put it there in the first place.
My guess is they're digging wetlands.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the only thing I've ever seen DEQ or anyone ever talk about is about wetlands. That's something they're very sensitive about.
Would be my guess. People ask.
But what else is considered sensitive lands other than wetlands?
Well, we have a lady here in the audience who used to be the environmental coordinator for the county. Maybe she can help us.
Could be threatened and endangered species also.
Endangered species. So
From an
are
enforcement
those two
standpoint,
things?
please be specific, because everyone can have an opinion on what environmentally sensitive areas are.
Yeah.
And there
Okay,
will
so we
be.
need to get that, they need to come up with
I say ask them.
what it is, yeah,
Okay.
and do it. Okay,
DCR is also a good resource for information on sensitive areas for plants in particular.
Thank you. Okay, Nelson.
So there was a small thing here, and this is a point that you made, Chairman Miller, regarding the transmission line. I would really like to see in 12573C that we add in the requirements and a commitment from the owners of the transmission line verifying that line capacity will support intended use for this project, and a specification of present line capacity and remaining line capacity after the project connection. Remember when you made the point of plugging the transmission line? I thought that was very valid, and I thought about it, and that's the language that I came up with.
Okay.
Because apparently, you know, SVEC wants to build some some community solar projects. It wouldn't hurt to ask them, A, do they have a commitment from
Well,
JPM or whatever?
First off, let me stress, the transmission line is different than SVEC. SVEC does not own these transmission lines. It's First Energy that owns the transmission lines. So if they do build these, they are gonna, if SVEC does build something, it will be on the current lines that you see on the roads and stuff like that, not the ones that are out in the
It'll be on the
fields.
distribution.
They'll be on different lines.
And if they built it, would they be bound by our ordinance?
No.
SVEC, they're public utility.
No, but they're not building utility grade solar here.
Yeah,
They might do as much as 3 acres from what I've read.
Yeah, they qualify, because didn't we say, at one time we said 2 acres qualifying.
I thought it was, well, I thought there was 3
May have
acres in on
changed.
this one.
But at one time it was 2 acres.
Doesn't
Is it
matter
2 or
if it's
3?
public utility.
I agree.
And it has to be on industrial or commercial for the medium
It
grade
doesn't
stuff.
matter, they're a
They're
public
public
utility.
utility, doesn't
They're
matter.
exempt.
So-
The state code
Good
exempts
point.
them.
So it's like us trying to control what we do in the national forest. It's or Luray or Shenandoah or Stanley. I would just remind everybody, we only control what we control.
So is it okay to ask for a commitment from the owners of the line, verifying that the line capacity will support the intended?
Well, not
use?
the, we should put the burden on the solar, on the applicant,
Yeah,
and not on the transmission line people. They need to go to them and they need to get a commitment from
Yes.
the transmission line.
so that's what I'm at, so that's exactly what I
That's what you
said.
want.
So
Yeah.
the
Okay.
applicant shall submit a certification that there's sufficient capacity on the line to support their project.
Mm-hmm, yeah, that's the wording we need.
Mhm. So that's what I say, a commitment from the owners of the transmission line, verifying that line
No,
capacity.
No, that's not correct.
The applicant shall supply.
Hang on 1 second, because I put it behind 12573C, so let me
You
go back.
keep talking about the owner of the transmission line. You need to talk about the owner of the solar facility.
Yeah, but who makes the commitment?
The
It doesn't-
owner of the solar
No, but
facility.
the applicant shall supply. It puts the burden on them.
Yeah,
Yes, but that comes anyhow.
No, let me finish. The applicant shall supply a commitment from the owner of the transmission line. Puts the burden on them to go get the certification.
that they can do it.
They can do it.
Instead of build it and then find out later you gotta expand the line.
They would do that anyway. They would do that anyway, because if it doesn't support it, they're responsible for
Yeah.
paying for the upgrade, which would then make it would make their project upside down. They would lose money immediately. But just make sure that we get that.
Now, what if, I'm playing devil's advocate here, what if we put the facility goes in, the Urban Grid or whoever is the builder builds it, and then they sell it to a utility. The capacity of the panels, double, triple, quadruple, whatever, and all of a sudden, now you have more power, but those transmission lines they were at full capacity. Would the utility that now owns the solar panels, would they be able to just say, well, they're gonna do it because we're a utility?
Their utility can do whatever they want. We can't control it.
So, in a lot of ways, there's not a lot of, This will control the part of the builder for now. But once it gets in the hands of the utility, we aren't gonna have a lot of say. You understand what I'm saying with that?
So in 12573, number 3, the letter C on page 2, it says identification of the intended utility company who will interconnect to the facility. Can we say that there? That we want applicant shall supply a commitment?
Yeah.
Okay. A commitment from the owners of the transmission line verifying, so check my language, verifying that line capacity will support intended use for this project?
Say that last part again.
A commitment from the owners of the transmission line verifying that line capacity will support intended use for this project?
Yeah.
And a specification of present line capacity and remaining line capacity after project connection. Feel free to change the language.
We can ask that. I mean, really, all we want from them is a, I would want to say certification that will support the additional capacity supplied by this facility.
Okay. To add structure after physical container in the definition of battery storage. That's Article 2. Battery storage, that's the third definition. Battery energy storage system means a physical container. Would you be okay to add structure? Meaning they're not just boxes, but if they become in the future, if the technology changes and we need, it can't just be a box.
That'd be hard for me, really. I'd go have that kind of box.
You know, right now we think of a battery as a box, but if they're big facilities, they might be big boxes, and then you need to regulate them.
All right.
So I had an issue here with the definition of solar facility under medium scale. And remind me if I'm wrong, but why are we not allowing medium scale facility on ag? Because it says for commercial and industrial applications. Why are we not adding agricultural? And then a little bit lower down, I mean, a lot lower down, but in Article 10, 12572B, we say medium scale,
Have an extra copy.
maybe installed by right, roof mounted or ground mounted in commercial and industrial, and only roof
I'll do
mounted
my
in
best.
agricultural zone. Why are we preventing the farmers from having medium scale solar facilities on the ground? And that doesn't make sense to me, and I think that might be a mistake.
I tend to agree with you. I would, you know, some people may look at that as a loophole, but 1 or 2 acres would not be bad. But it would have to be, and in this case, like I was telling you with SVDC, it wouldn't have to be close to a transmission line either. It would have to be close to a pretty high capacity line, but it wouldn't have to be a transmission line.
I mean, I'm just thinking we're allowing the people who have a business, an industry, to put solar facilities medium scale, you know, according to the definition, but we're not, you know, it doesn't make sense. Why are we not allowing farmers to do
We
that?
made that recommendation to change that earlier, just haven't been changed.
No, I agree. I think that should be changed. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
So it's that blue line in B.
Kathy, can you tell me where you're at, please, so I can
Yeah,
get this
so-
up to the
Article 10,
audience?
page 1.
So Article 10, page 1, B, 12572 zoning districts, B. It says may install by right, roof mounted or grounded in commercial and industrial districts and roof mounted only in ag districts. That's basically telling farmers they can only put solar panels on their chicken houses, but they can't put it on the ground.
And at one point, it was only the other way, they just, in my opinion, what happened there is we wanted to include roof
And
mounted.
they just swapped it.
And they swapped that.
Yeah, that's what
So what I'm suggested here is two things. We need to add agricultural to commercial and solar in the definition of solar facility medium scale. And then in Article 10, 125.72B, we need to add the word agricultural to commercial industrial, strike and roof mounted only in ag district. Because that didn't seem right to me. So I have a whole bunch of small things, but I think I might just leave those for now. One thing that's bothered me is, do you remember when we received from the Berkeley Group a paper that looked like this, that was telling us about the legislative updates? Her recommendation was that we went with what is said in HB 655. Well, I verified all the code sections that she talks about in 125.73.12, and that's page 73.12, that's page 4. Number 12, so I had a couple things about, say, number 12. First of all, I think the community impact assessment needs to be done by a county-approved third party. By a county-approved third party. The community impact assessment shouldn't be done by them. It should be done by a third party, including but not limited to comprehensive economic impact, agricultural and tourism revenue, employment, taxation shall be required and shall assess, blah, blah, blah. Meaning, we just want a third party doing that assessment. And then, in those code sections that are listed, she's missing the code section that refers to the House bill that she recommended. I know it's technical, but I have it here for you, Tracy.
Okay.
And I think it's an oversight on her part.
Okay.
She mentioned all the code sections that referred to the ones that she did not recommend, but not to the one she recommended. And I went to check all of them. I looked at all the bills in detail. So I'd like to see that corrected, but I have it here for you, Tracy.
Okay.
I'm gonna try not to keep you too long. To me, there's a lot of places where it says concept plan and then site plan, and I remember Mr. Holsinger saying that in his experience, they weren't well defined in our county. So maybe we should stick with one or the other, but I think we need to be careful, so we need to have them look at that.
No, they're two distinctly different things.
Yes, so we need to be careful, and here's my example. For instance, in 125.75B, the stage that they're mentioning here, it's page 5. B, a utility scale solar facility shall be constructed and maintained in substantial compliance with the approved concept plan. If it's an approved concept plan, isn't that a site plan at that point where they're constructed and maintained? Can you explain that to me, Mr. Quigley?
Concept plan should be early on when
Yes.
you're developing your concept,
Yes.
and then when it's
Yeah.
approved, then you move on and do the site plan,
Yes.
sign and seal by an engineer. and
So we change that to site plan.
So that should be site plan right
It
here.
really should be site plan.
Yeah, okay. And then if it's, are we okay with substantial compliance with a site plan?
Substantial compliance is fine. If you say compliance, then if there's one tiny, tiny little thing that's off, then you revoke their SUP. Substantial compliance is the terminology we use.
So, but it is site plan, right?
I think it should be
So my
site.
recommendation is just that maybe make sure throughout the document that they're using concept plan and site plan correctly.
I would ask them,
Yeah.
maybe it's a planning thing, that, they use concept plan for the one that's attached to the SUP versus the site plan, which is the one that they then pay their engineer the rest of the money to go ahead and take the construction. That might be differentiated. I think it's worth a question. it in the definitions.
Something we're gonna add into the zoning ordinance.
Oh, okay, good.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Tracy a question? Would you describe what a site plan looks like that comes into you now?
To me, I describe a site plan as something that shows your house, where your property line is, how many feet your proposed structure is from your property line, existing structures, well and septic, if it already has it on site. To me, that's what I identify as a
And
site plan.
sometimes you get them on napkins.
We have, yes.
That was my,
But do they
that was my
stay,
concern.
But in this case,
In this case, we
this
need,
has to be,
this
we need
would
to
be,
make sure this is formal.
this would be from an engineering firm. It would have stormwater, it would have survey, it would have contours, it would have grading plans for an access road.
The reason that I brought it up was to remind everybody that we have a very informal definition of site plan.
Not in this
Not in
case,
this
though.
one.
It would be signed
But
and sealed.
And so the discussion about whether it's early or late or middle, the key is that we have a formal site plan at some point. And that was and I think it's here. I think it says that. Or I guess it needs to say that.
So I have one more point, which I think is important. If you look on page 5, last third or quarter of the page, C, we had put in all substations and utility switchyard and any other associated equipment must also comply with these minimum setbacks. And she changed that to say at the bottom, to say afterwards, substation and switchyard that are not located with the panels but are located on a separate parcel away from the project site shall meet a minimum setback to property lines of 75 feet. So if you think about that, my point was, what is the rationale or the reason for treating substations and utility switchyards separately? Why do we have different setbacks if they're not located with the panels? And by the way, I don't think that's terminology. With the panels is very clear. Why are we doing it any different?
That's their error. That's not what we said.
That's not what we said, yes,
That's
that's
not
my
what we
point.
said.
That's not what we wanted. So if you go back and look under G, page 6, she added a whole new paragraph in blue trying to justify that, and that to me doesn't make sense. My comment was, why would our requirements be lower if the substation is located away from the facility?
She was trying to ensure that it wouldn't become a part of the system owned by the utility, and she can't regulate that. It's an error.
Yeah, I think it's an error too.
It's an error.
Because I'm saying requiring less stringent setbacks would only encourage developers to extend the original site to a separate parcel, which may escape the control of this ordinance and make them more difficult to regulate, especially since they will eventually be sold to utilities that escape our regulation. So shall we have her reconsider that G there and put back what we asked her to put back to start with?
My guess is that she did misinterpret. We understand that we can't protect it if it's off-site. We understand that, if it's gonna be done by the utility. I think she heard us being concerned about that and was trying to fix it, but I don't think this fixes it, so. I would suggest that we try to return to what our thought was, which was if it's on-site, that it has to have the same setbacks.
Well, exactly, which is what we had put in.
Which
All
is what we've done,
substations and
yeah.
utility switchyard and any other associated equipment must also comply with these minimum standards. That was pretty clear. Okay.
So can you be specific in what I'm telling her we want here?
Do you want me
We
to?
need to
Do you
rediscuss
want me to
it.
come back with you with all of these things? Because I have it all written down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe she has a good reason for it. That's a good idea. Maybe this
She can
off-site
ex-
thing makes sense to her. It just doesn't to me.
They can
But
explain that to us on Tuesday.
yeah,
Yeah,
they
that's
can
what
come
we
and
need to
talk
do.
to us about it.
and bring that septic system.
Because it's basically easy, Tracy, it's in C, it's reinstate the deleted last sentence, sorry, Mary. I'm not sure why she replaced it.
And so, okay,
in G.
we're reinstating that last line.
Yes,
Are we
and
taking
then-
out C2
Yes,
and G,
and
both?
then G, we don't want it, we need to strike it.
G just goes away
I
completely.
mean, like it was before, I don't understand what she's trying to do that.
Okay.
And especially when you say substation and switchyards that are not located with the panel, to me, that's very vague. What does with the panels mean? I don't like that. And I have a bunch of typos, but I won't go through them there, I'll just give them to you.
Please don't.
No, I know. I've got a few more, but I think I'll let you guys go for these, so that you don't hate me too much. There's a couple of third things about, we should ask third party approve, you know, making the impact statements, visual impact analysis, things like that, that we just.
Don't we have that?
Yeah, we have it for some things, but not for everything, but I was just thinking we should be, consistent, but. Oh, yes, there's one thing as well. In 12575D, which is on page 6. D on page 5. The maximum height of the lowest edge, I know we talked about that before. I don't understand why we're regulating the lowest edge.
That's a mistake too, it's supposed to be that.
Because we have the highest edge, the maximum height of photovoltaic panels, she put that in there, why are we regulating the lowest edge?
It's a mistake.
I mean, is there something that I'm
It's a mistake.
misunderstanding?
It's just a
Yeah,
mistake.
correct. I don't understand why that's there. And I think we need to add battery storage to primary structures in there as well. Because there again, we want to make sure that those battery storages, I'm hearing that in Spotsylvania, they're gonna be stored in buildings covering several acres, and that concerns me. So I think we need to put that in there. Also in 12575D. When we say primary structures, we should add battery storage facilities. You sent us an email, and I think it's part of the package of Ms. Anderson had asked us to put back the native along with the non-invasive.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation. And maybe also in 12575I, page 6, when we require water testing, we should say by an accredited third party. We don't want them to be testing their own water.
Can you repeat that
Would you-
section again? I'm sorry.
Yes, 12575I, page 6. At the very end of the paragraph, it's like the 1, 2, 3, 4th from the bottom. The county reserves the right to request soil and water testing. It would say by an accredited
Wouldn't it
third
be the
party.
health department anyway?
You know, it doesn't hurt to make sure that they're not doing their own testing.
I mean, you wouldn't accept water tests from anybody, except for the health department, wouldn't you?
I agree.
Tracy?
We don't get involved in water testing. The health department will accept it from Bowdoin or
Lab
Water
or-
Plus.
So, but you would go, but in this case here, if there was a water test, you would have to go to the health department from somebody.
Correct.
And they wouldn't accept it from anybody else except for a certified,
Correct.
okay. Okay, I mean, write what you want with that, but
Okay.
it sounds like it is somewhat covered, or it is covered.
As long as it's covered, it's good.
Okay.
I can go on another half an hour, but I think you guys have had enough for now.
How about another 15 minutes?
Okay. Then, in 12576G.
Does that include the public comment? 'Cause that's been
Oh.
going for a
Oh, yeah,
while.
the public
How about
comment.
5 minutes? How
Are
about
you
5
sure?
more minutes?
She offered to stop. I've got about 20 minutes and I've got to get it.
Okay.
No, that's okay, I have small things here, which can we talk
All right,
about,
let's,
you know.
because
It's okay.
there's
Yeah.
people that do have.
I've been going all
It's
week,
okay.
so I drove
No
all the way from
problem.
Virginia Beach to get here. I'm
All
not
right,
gonna stay.
let's leave
Oh,
it for now,
God.
let's
All
leave
right,
it for
let's,
now.
let's do those.
You know what, I'll bring
public
those
hearings.
things directly to Tracy, they're small things, and
That's
then
fine.
if you guys have a
Can
problem.
you bring it
with
up with the,
Mr. Chairman, before you go to that, I'd like to recognize this young man for organizing this meeting tonight. Extremely helpful, a great opportunity. It's been very helpful, and I think without your leadership in requesting this meeting, we would not have made the progress we made tonight. And so I'd like to recognize him for that.
thank you very
Thank you.
much, Bill. Thank you. All right. All right, we'll move on from the unfinished business.
Clyde Humphrey?
My name is Clyde Humphrey, and I'll try to keep my comments very, very brief, considering the hour. And I'll, if you'll forgive me, try to add a little bit of humor as I go. The first draft we got from Berkeley, I reviewed and wrote up about 90 comments on it. This draft I reviewed and worked late into the night and only wrote 62 comments. So we're going in the right direction. It's getting better, and 2 more iterations, we'll be there. Okay. Most of the comments that I've written, I think are really not, I've provided all of you a copy of them. And I've numbered in the left margin, I just sequentially numbered my comments to make it easier to refer to. But I don't intend to discuss any of the particular comments this evening. I would just say that I think that pretty much, I sidestepped the question of prime farmland. I didn't address that. I did make a brief comment about the scenic view from the highways, but you've already discussed that. And so the other 60 comments I have are really fairly mundane. They really focus on kind of correcting the spelling, the grammar, filling in a few blanks, tightening up the whole regulation, trying to make it a better document. There's not much in there in my comments that are really substantive. They're really just trying to make the document better. And what I would like to ask you to do is to read between now and when are we meeting again? Thursday? No.
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Between now and Tuesday, review them. And if you're largely in agreement, then I would like to ask you to direct the Berkeley group to consider them. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Humphrey.
Ken Jamelody?
I'll be even briefer than that. With this document and the changes that y'all have talked about this evening, I actually like it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charles Newton?
I agree with Mr. Jamelty. I think you've made a lot of good progress tonight. To save you some worry and an awful lot of your discussion tonight, the information that's in the comp plan for prime farmland and farmland of statewide importance is very general. And the map is so small, you're right, it's very hard to tell from that what you're talking about. But the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources Conservation Service, and Virginia Tech got together, and they now have what's called the Web Soil Survey. And you can go right down to the acre to figure out what the soils are there. Much more detailed information than what the original Soil Conservation Service first started with their generalized, maps of the state. So the two agencies, the state agency at Virginia Tech and USDA have worked out that kind of stuff, so you now can count on it if you go to the Web Soil Survey. I know it's a little bit hard maybe for you as the farmer to figure out, but it's definitely available. You can ask either the FSA or the Natural Resource Conservation Service over in Harrisonburg for help if you have a specific area you want to look at. So it's definitely a good resource. It's something that you can pretty well bet on. And yes, having a soil scientist come out if there's a dispute, that's a reasonable thing to do. But I would recommend that you protect more than 50% of the good soils on a site. I really think that you don't want to lose more than 20 or 30% of the site's good soils to development. Really, if I were doing it, since the figures that you were talking about, the 140 million, that's a 2017 figure. The 2018, which is the more recent one, is 160 million or more dollars that come from agriculture in this county. And that's a significant bit of income, not only for the farmers that own the land, but the people that they employ and the businesses then that serve them. And that's what we need to maintain. If we start losing the businesses that serve the farmers because we're cutting back on our farmland and the amount of crops that we grow and the amount of animals that we raise and that sort of thing, then you're going to get to the point where it's no longer sustainable place to grow things. And our tourism certainly works really well with all the pastoral views that farming tends to provide. So those two leading industries for our county are very, very important. Enough said.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Beth Snyder.
I just want to thank everybody that read the document and put their input in, and all the hard work Kathy and Keith and a couple of you all did, and I think you made a lot of progress. Thank you.
Chris Anderson.
I'm good, Tracy.
Okay. Paul Otto.
I'd like to give my time to Mr. Newton. He can speak to the issue of groundwater with a lot more expertise than I do.
It is one of our basic natural resources. In the karst environment, which our valley floor is, all underlying geology of limestone, dolomite, karst, what's called karst. Everything we do on the surface, whether we're constructing something or fertilizing something, it all ends up in groundwater. And our groundwater, USGS and other testing that's been done here in the valley show that the groundwater nitrates are slowly increasing at the same time that our rivers and streams are decreasing in the runoff. So even though we're doing a good job at trying to protect our rivers and our little creeks and stuff, we're having trouble with a very slow increase in the groundwater, and that is not good for our future. I'll just mention also that forests do help protect water quality in our by the slowing down the way that water moves through the soil. So your discussions about protecting forested areas and are very good. I'm glad you were doing that. You can certainly define them and get the Department of Forestry to help you with that definition so that you're not putting something in the specs, the ordinance that can't be managed. So I'd encourage you to please consider protecting the ground, sensitive areas. Basically, all of our land in the valley here is draining into our aquifers, which then in turn do run out through springs and feed the base flow of all our streams.
There are no
Thank
more
you.
speakers.
Thank you. All right,
May
there's no
I
more.
ask a question?
Okay.
Am I correct in understanding, Mr. Newton, that you're our elected official for water quality in the county?
I'm one of two representatives from Page County for the Soil and Water Conservation District, which is Page and Rockingham and the city of Harrisonburg. Yes,
So would it be fair that you speak to us as an expert and not just a member of the public?
I have certainly studied this area a lot, yes, and you might give me that credential, yes.
Thank you.
All right, any more comments? Adjourned. Hey, I want to.